Just 10 minutes after, there's another 7 deuce situation, the $25 straddle's on, DQ limps in from early position, E raises to 100 in the 9 seat, Seti's on the button and puts in the 3-bet to 350 with pocket 9s, but the graphics don't initially pick his cards up. I'm in the big blind with 7 deuce, and I'm ready to play. I put in the cold 4-bet to 1300. I get through a handful of players, I can't get through the poker traveler, he calls for 850 more, we're heads up out of position against someone who just got bluffed by 7 deuce a few hands prior. At least the flop comes queen 6-6. It's not particularly great for 7 deuce, but it's good that Seti didn't improve. Mike Brady's in the booth. He also recognizes that I may be able to steal this at some point.
Decent flop for Brad to put in a bet and potentially get Poker Traveler to fold by the flop or turn. But he's going to have to put in the bets.
Typically, I'd bet small in this flop with a variety of hands. I have to get Seti to fold though. And he already showed me in the first hand we played together that he isn't letting go of hands very easily against me. With that knowledge bouncing around in my brain, I bet 2,000 expecting him to fold a hand like the one he has or some ace-high hands. The opponent stays consistent with his approach against me and he calls. I tell myself that I'm going to shut down unless we get a club on the turn. Instead, it's the 8 of hearts. I only have 4,000 total. Very little time goes by and you see me announce that I'm all in. It's a weird instance in which I go against what I was planning to do. I just can't help myself. Luckily, it happens at the best possible time because if the opponent's cards were face up, I'd make the exact same play, expecting the bluff to get through an overwhelming percentage of the time. The only issue is that I'm up against Cedric, who we already established doesn't like folding to my bets, and to make matters worse, just got bluffed by 7 deuce 4 hands earlier. Said he has a rule that he lives by. He's only allowed to get bluffed a maximum of 1 time within a 24-hour period. Plus, this is Texas. No one has ever folded to a turn shove in the history of the state. Cedric destroys my world and makes the call. I'm drawn completely dead in a $15,000 pot, all because of this stupid 7 deuce game. The river is an inconsequential king, except if I'd bet small on the flop like I normally do, then bet a normal amount on the turn, and jammed on the king river, I would have had a better chance of getting what became third pair to fold. I had a number of things going against me this particular hand, mostly bad timing and the wrong opponent. I didn't play it well, but I'm still surprised that I wasn't able to get the opponent to fold. Said he makes a tough call to stack me. Everything's going just fine when we pick up 7 deuce offsuit on the button. Boston Jimmy is raised to 250 from middle position with pocket 10s. The 7 deuce game is on, meaning if anyone wins with it, everyone at the table has to pay the winner $100. The last person to fold has to pay $200. I call the 250, it's heads up. The flop comes queen 4 deuce rainbow. We at least have a pair. The opponent checks. I stab at it for 300 to mainly represent a set of deuces since I have card removal for it. I might be able to get some hands with equity to fold, and I may even be able to get a hand like pocket 10s to fold if the opponent is super tight. We don't get the fold. Boston Jimmy is stuck a good chunk and needs to get revenge against me for the jiggities. Plus, his hand is the best, so why would he? He calls. I'm still putting him on something like Broadway cards or a pocket pair that didn't make a set below queens. Unfortunately, we see a turn that's great for both the opponent's range and his actual hand.
Oh,
okay.
I told her it was trouble.
Right. Okay, now this is confirmed some trouble. 3 of a kind for Jimmy on the turn. Check, check. 10 on the river.
Quads.
4 of a kind.
Quads for Boston Jimmy.
The backdoor quad draw.
Wow, this is a very disguised quads.
Oh, he checks it over, and Brad is going for it.
Turn the duck into a bluff.
This is not going to work out well. I actually strongly considered checking back because I still beat all ace highs and hands like king jack suited, but the problem is that I don't beat pocket pairs like jacks, 9s, 8s, and a few others that the opponent would play this way that he might fold to a river bet with, since I'll have king 10, jack 10, and 10-9 suited hands that I'd also play this way. I certainly don't expect to be up against anything strong once the opponent is checked 3 times, particularly after it went check-check on the turn. There's no real reason for Boston Jimmy to think that all of a sudden I'm going to try to bluff river or we'll be able to call a check raise. Perfect confluence of events happens for Jimmy to put in the raise to 4,200. It makes no sense to me. To be fair, it's not that often that someone backdoors quads. It's even less often that when they do, they check all 3 streets. I'm extremely suspicious that this is being done with complete air. I already stacked Jimmy once today. Is it possible that he wants to pull a move to teach me a lesson? I ask him to lift up his hands to see if he has enough behind for me to potentially bluff shove. There aren't too many better feelings than when you're holding the nuts and someone has to see your stack. I'm having a tough time trying to piece this one together. The only hand that I can think of that's reasonable for the opponent to play this way is pocket queens, and even that doesn't seem super likely. There's no need for me to raise unless he turned a hand like pocket 8s into a bluff. I'm perplexed, and I get an extra 900 from the table if I can bluff catch correctly. With that incentive, I call, it hurts, I run into another monster. I'm still winning for the session, but I give most of my profit back to its rightful owner. The 7 deuce game has cost me a lot of money this week. It actually accounts for around 80% of my total losses on the trip at the moment. I obviously could have folded on the river there. I just have to try to forget about it, play better, and move on. I win some small pots before I pick up 7 deuce offsuit on the button. We all know how well I've been doing with this hand recently. The pain it's caused this week doesn't stop me. I raised at 325. I only need to get through the blinds and Jesse Sylvia in the straddle to pick up an additional 800. The big blind's a new player at the table, but he's aware that we're playing the 7 deuce game. He's the only caller. We're heads up in position. The flop comes King Jack 5 rainbow. The opponent checks. There's a great flop from my range with 2 Broadway cards out there. I bet 600 to shut this thing down immediately and win some extra money. The opponent is suspicious. Still, he knows that he can't rep much after flatting my raise pre-flop. He folds. I finally get some 7 deuce money back.
Alright, we got it. You owe 2. You owe 2. Alright.
We pick up pocket queens in the cutoff. This is a hand that's included in a lot of pre-flop charts as a raise from this position. I make it 300. The button is a new player. He welcomes himself to the table by 3-betting me to 1,000. I should actually be 4-betting. I call for 700 more. We're heads up out of position and the flop comes Queen Jack 10 rainbow. We've got top set. This is a very interesting flop because the button is supposed to have 3-bet us pre-flop with 3 different straight combinations including Ace King, King 9, and 9-8. He's also going to have hands that we'll have in terrible shape like sets of jacks and 10s and also pocket aces. Kings isn't doing too terrible against us, it's just a 2-to-1 dog. I check. The opponent is a good player, knows that this is a great flop for his range. He bets 700. I have a decision to make. One option is to raise. I might be able to get calls or raises from sets or overpairs. The problem with this is that I could be up against a straight or a bluff. If I'm up against a straight, I don't want to put more money in the pot. If I'm up against a bluff, I won't be winning any additional money by raising. I'll just be denying equity, and the opponent may not even have that much or any equity in some cases. I call. This is still risky because we don't want to see 4 to the straight on board. The turn is the 6 of clubs. That's a good safe one. I check. Perhaps I'll go for the check raise if the button bets here. He does bet. He bets 3,000. This is definitely on the larger side. Everything is escalating extremely quickly. I can't help but think that a straight is the most likely hand that he'll have. There are 16 combos of Ace King he could have, 4 combos each of King 9 and 9-8 suited. That's a total of 24 combos. Meanwhile, there are only 6 combos of aces, 6 combos of kings, and 3 combos each of pocket jacks and pocket 10s. There's only 1 combo each of hands like Queen Jack and Queen 10 suited as well. I call, hoping for a paired board one time. The river is the jack of spades. We have the second nuts in a pot that's nearly $10,000. The opponent isn't going to like the jack if he has a straight, or even if he has a hand like aces or kings, especially after I called a 3-bet, a flop bet, and a huge turn bet. I don't want to check and have this get checked back. I fire for 10,000. If I get called, I'll win the biggest pot of my life, and I'll be up the most that I've ever been up in a single session before. Instead, the opponent folds, showing that he has the world's worst hand.
Deuce 7.
The opponent was bluffing us the entire way with 7 deuce. What kind of an idiot would lose over $4 grand playing that game? Don't answer that. After that, we're playing short-handed for a bit and are dealt 7 deuce of spades in the small blind. Onto the gun limps in, I call for 3 more. The big blind checks, the flop comes 9-4 deuce with 2 diamonds, checks through. The turn is the 7 of hearts. There are 2 hearts and 2 diamonds now. I bet 15. The big blind calls, the under the gun player folds. The river is an offsuit queen, a lot of hands brick. I want to get some value out of my 2 pair. I bet 45 to make it look like a bluff. The big blind calls, and we win another one.